Okay, so you want to make a Vampire the Masquerade campaign. So, as an experienced storyteller and dungeon master, let me tell you the steps that I do to start creating the campaign. The first thing you do is day zero, where you get with the people that are going to be playing and you have them make characters. And then from there, you help guide them through if they've never done it before, but if they're veterans, maybe you do it with them. And then you find out what they want out of your campaign. Because ultimately, you can make whatever you want, but if it's not what they enjoy, it's useless. They'll do one session like, I wasn't really feeling that. So you really want to look at what they're creating. For example, for Vampire the Masquerade, if they're creating someone who is a social butterfly, that's something they really want to concentrate on. So you don't want to send them like random encounters of people always trying to fight them. You want their obstacles to be social obstacles to overcome. Whereas somebody else may have made a physical person who's like, dude, I just want to fucking kill shit. Um, and then you can, fulfill that power fantasy that they had, or someone else might just make a mental character, they're a professor, and you want to give them things that requires brain power to overcome and not so much social and physical. Generally you get like a mix. I like doing anywhere from 2 to 4 players at the same time. That way, hopefully you have like a mix of all three. Um, and then in Dungeons and Dragons, I did more like physical, but in Vampire the Masquerade, what I usually do is I create a social issue, then a mental issue, then a social issue, and a mental issue, and then I usually end the night with a physical confrontation of some sort. For example, when you first get, let's say you're first getting embraced, the first things that you could go over is okay. It's kind of a social thing. I need to learn how to hunt. I need to go find a ghoul or something to protect me during the daytime. There's the mental aspect of it, which is I need to find a place to live. I need to find an income to pay for this place to live. Um, and some of that can be fulfilled by the ghoul, and some of that can be fulfilled by other means. And then some examples of like a social thing would be like a health inspector, where the health inspector is coming to inspect either your business or your house as a vampire, and that's going to create all sorts of problems. Um, Befriending other vampires, befriending other people in power, or really even just getting ghouls or people that you could feed from easily is really good social barriers you can come in with, and then you can have like reoccurring characters that are just coming up after you socially, like another vampire who doesn't like you, calls you out, or something like that. Or maybe there's like an election and you have to like interfere with the election because the election wants to shut down whatever business that your goal is generating money with, whether it be like a nightclub or like an Indian reservation or something like that. And then some mental barriers would be maybe there's a mortal detective that's, on you because they figured out, oh wow, this person killed someone, but I don't know who they is or who they are. And they're following the clues trying to find you, and you have to outsmart this mortal detective. Or maybe there's occult scholars from the local university that are trying to do a study on you. And a mental could be something that's just learning about vampires, learning about all the things in the world of darkness, like fairies and ghosts, and the difference between a gangrel and a tremere. Uh, Everything from like the ghoul powers and researching that and the history of vampires itself. And you can be chased down by police. You could be looking for someone and you need the mental aspects for. So I like to do social mental, like I said. And then I'll usually end it with something physical. So it could be the health inspector, brought police, or the mortal detective finally found you and brought some people to take you down. It could be lost ghouls from a vampire that died. Like maybe your sire died and he had ghouls and they're coming to you and they're like, look, we need to feed. And you're going to feed us whether you like it or not. I mean, it could be other vampires, but I generally tend not to use other vampires because I think humans make a very good adversary in the world of darkness for a new player, a new vampire anyway. I mean, just even just a ghoul that's like 200 years old, his vampire died. He doesn't use guns, he just uses a sword. And he's coming at you. He wants your blood. But something like that could be the physical portion. But starting out, you really want to like establish the vampire's ghouls that protect them during the day, and a way to generate money. Or else, without doing that, um, the vampire is just gonna live. I mean, they would have the place that they lived in when they were immortal, but they're not gonna be able to hold a job anymore. Theoretically, unless maybe like 4 hours during the night, but that's not gonna pay the mortgage. So the best thing that they can do is find a ghoul that has a home, has jobs, maybe two ghouls, and the ghouls give them their money. And the ghouls can be in places of power also. For example, you could ghoul the arms dealer in the local National Guard or police station, and then boom, you have instant access to handguns and M16s and things like that. And of course, the ghoul will eventually get found out, but then, you would just find a new ghoul at that point because he'll never rat on you. But the goal could be even of something physical, social, and mental. Like the physical one could be, the arms dealer I talked about, but a social goal could be an intern for the mayor. And boom, you instantly have, you know, someone in the government who's looking out for you. And then a mental one could be like a detective or a doctor or someone who makes a lot of money, but also has different skills that could be useful to you. The social one could be a stock market guru, and he doesn't even work anymore. He's just making money off the stock market. So all of them, their main purpose is to protect you during the day, but they can bring in money, they can bring in skills, and they can bring in like physical power, especially if you took like a soldier or something. But that first session, well, the first session should just be making the characters because that's when you find out what you want, and then you can create an entire campaign about what they want. And then the second session is when you actually start playing. And I always feel like a good part is start with the goals, start with where they're gonna live, get them used to like feeding, have them make some mistakes while they're feeding, have consequences to that, and then just start throwing in like tiny things to mess with them. Maybe a corrupt policeman who, is looking to extort money for whatever, business they have that brings in money. It could be a health inspector, it could be a detective. I start with like a pretty weak mortal that follows them around for some reason for the first campaign. And then usually the second campaign, they don't even meet usually another vampire during the first campaign other than their sire. And then the second campaign is when they finally start meeting other vampires and they're learning that the world is bigger than what they originally thought. For example, in Baltimore by Night, the second campaign centers around a 150-year-old Native American vampire where this vampire controls land north of Baltimore, where a Native American tribe still stays. It's only about 5,000 people, but they worship this vampire as a god in their habitat. Where like usually people, it's all gated off. It's a whole like 10 acres where regular people can't even enter. You have to be a Native American card carrying to enter it. So she's very well protected. She has her own protective circle around her, so she doesn't have to worry about vampire hunters and things. But what she does have to worry about, and it's a social thing, is the local mayor, wants to take some of the Native American land away from her, which, that's her land. So and this is a grand girl, so she's fighting not physically but socially through ghouls to try to keep her Native American land because she does love the Native Americans around her. She's protected them for 150 years, and in turn, they protect her. But, of course, there's another vampire that wants that land for another reason, which I never got into. But I really like the idea of like anytime they make a major mistake, It's almost like, one star, two star kind of thing. Like a one star, like a mortal detective starts following them, and they got to convince somehow that it was somebody else, or frame a ghoul or another human or something like that. I mean, even as simple as using dominate on this guy to make him think something else happened. But of course, if you kill the immortal detective, and then that creates its own problems. So I love having like first, second, and third order of events where, yeah, if you used physical and you killed the ghoul, like he's done with. But now, you just alerted a bunch of other people. This guy was investigating something and he got murdered. Now there's like three detectives that are like on it. His friends are on it. His family starts asking around. And also the family of ghoul members makes a very good social encounter. Uh, I have one campaign where they went into a strip club and they pretty much ghouled all the strippers in there, and they generate money that but and then the strippers, they live in the strip club, and then the strippers protect them during the day. But then family starts coming around. Their husbands start coming. Their fathers start coming. Hey, I haven't seen so and so, Christy, in 3 months. I know she worked here. Blah blah blah. So it creates their own issues. The ghoul's family, and that's why a lot of vampires, they only keep ghouls for like 3 to 6 months. But the older ghouls, they can be very, very useful. For example, one of the stripper ghouls had presence one, but still, she got on stage and she could use the presence one and just generate a lot of cash. And then one of the other strippers had fortitude two. So she could fight, man. She wasn't that strong, but in a gunfight, she could protect you. And the other ghoul had celerity. She had like celerity one and fortitude one, I think it was, and she was a good protector too. But you could have a ghoul with Auspex who's a detective also, and they can do all sorts of things for you. But they have family members that you have to either deal with, unless you find, a ghoul that doesn't have any family. And of course, the goals that you want are the ones with the lower willpower, because a high willpower goal might say no to every once in a while. And the lower the willpower of the goal, the less likely or less ability they have to say no. But that's generally how I start my campaign.